Um, the song Divine Today was when I had picked to sing, and so I said, okay, how do I put a message around that song? And it went around, and what finally I landed on was the first line of the song, the beckoning of spirit, the beckoning of spirit. I think we've all had times where we all of a sudden just felt that something needed to be done, or some thought came to us, something that beckoned us to maybe to be different than we were, or step forward in some way, or just to live in a new way. I know for myself, it's happened several times, and hopefully and thankfully, it continues today. I know most of you don't consider it, but even as I'm getting old, I continue to discover that beckoning of spirit to go on and to discover more, to become more. And I was trying to figure out a story to tell that what character would help me to show what the beckoning of spirit would look like in someone's life. And I struck on Nicodemus. If you remember Nicodemus from the book of John in the Bible, was a Pharisee, and there's only one verse that I remember him being in, but then I found out that there's two other places that he shows up. But the first one I think we're all familiar with, where he comes to Jesus at night and he says, I know you're from God. I know what you're saying, all the miracles you've done, I know there's something there in you. What's going on? And so somewhere inside, this Nicodemus was a Pharisee. And the Pharisees were a member of a Jewish sect noted for strict observance of rites and ceremonies and law, and for insistence on the validity of their oral traditions. The system of religion was more about outward form than genuine faith. Now, that last sentence was written by someone who was not a Pharisee, because I believe the Pharisees believed that it was true faith. Their adherence to those strict and guidelines that they were supposed to do to please God, that somehow that put them in a place of oneness with God, with the Creator. And so it was for them a genuine faith. And I'm thinking, here's Nicodemus, and he's a Pharisee, and he's a real Pharisee. He's in it. He's sold in. And just before this, Jesus, the stories have the Jesus changing water into wine, and then he goes out and he recruits a posse, his disciples. He builds a team of 12 with the disciples. And so at this point, Jesus is starting to be known. And Nicodemus, of course, he's in the midst of all this, and he finds out about this and hears all the stories about what's going on. And he approaches Jesus at night. He's not sure he really wants to be seen as someone that believes in this sort of thing or is drawn to this sort of thing, because it's definitely not pharisaical. It's definitely not who he has lived to be. So he approaches him at night, and he comes to me and says, yeah, what's going on? But I know that you are from God. The miracles speak for themselves. And even in that is kind of an off-handed, sideways way of saying, there's something here I know, and I don't really want to tell you that I'm feeling something special from you, or I'm feeling something different from you, and I'm attracted to that. So I'm going to tell you, I see your miracles. And so he's kind of edging in and saying, oh, this kind of stuff. And sometimes, unfortunately, the response of Jesus is portrayed as being mean and cutting him off at the gate there, saying, oh, listen, you got to be born again. And you got all these different things. You've got to be born of water and of spirit. And things that Nicodemus is like, what? Am I supposed to go back in my mom's womb? What are you talking about? And so Jesus, I think instead, knowing the character of Jesus, I think Jesus saw in him that draw to him. And he said, this guy wants to know This guy wants to know. And so he said, he told him what he needed to know to challenge him to keep stepping forward, to keep stepping forward. Listen, there's more here than you know. There's more here than you know. And he responds to him that way, saying, trying to draw him into to what it was that he was about. And Nicodemus, the interesting part is at that point in the story, Nicodemus disappears. They don't say, exit stage left. They don't say Nicodemus went on his way and was fine and went on to live a happy life or whatever. They just drop. He just disappears, and they go into Jesus's statements and says, Jesus answered, I tell you the truth, unless a man is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. And Nicodemus says, how can this be? And Jesus says, you are Israel's leader. You are Israel's leader, and you don't know, you don't understand this? And again, in some ways that can sound almost sarcastic, almost like, who are you? What in the world? Why don't you understand this? But instead, I think, again, the compassion coming from it. It's like, there's more here to this. You understand things in a certain way. You are a leader of these people. I understand that. And so I'm inviting you to look again. The Spirit is beckoning you. Somehow you came here to see me. I didn't call you. I didn't go over and stand in front of you and look it up. Something inside of you said, I want to go talk to Jesus. Now, I don't want to do it in the daytime because people are going to think, have ideas about, I'm a Pharisee, and all my Pharisee buddies will be going, teasing me and ribbing me, probably maybe kick me out of the club. I don't know. So he comes to him at night. And sometimes we respond that way. That beckoning of Spirit comes to us, and we're kind of like, that sounds a little radical. That sounds a little radical. I know for me, back in 2000, I had the idea that I wanted to go to seminary, and I wanted to get my Master's of Divinity degree, but I was scared. I was just like, who am I? Because I'd been to the Salvation Army's School for Officers Training, and so I was ordained and worked as an officer in the Salvation Army, but it wasn't accredited. And I really wanted to know where did all this come from? All the stuff that I used to read about and talk, where did it come from? So I really wanted to dive in and experience earning that Master of Divinity degree. But again, I went at night. I approached it at night, and I said, God, if this is really what you want me to do, get me into Harvard. Or if not Harvard, I'll settle for University of Chicago. The slumming, just that type of thing. And basically what I was just afraid to go. And so, but I did apply. I applied to the two schools, but unfortunately, when you apply to a place like Harvard, you have reference letters. They want you, a senator maybe, something like that to say, Scott's really, he's the one you want, whatever. Well, I sent my reference letters. My Arabic teacher wrote in cursive on a piece of paper, Scott's a great guy. You should take him. And so I didn't get accepted. Needless to say, I didn't get accepted. One thing I did do, I went to visit Harvard. I went to spend 3 days on the Harvard campus because I wanted to see if they really accepted me, did I really want to be at Harvard? Did they really merit my presence on their campus? And so I went and stayed there. And the neat thing about it was, what I came away with was, all those students were excited about learning. They weren't walking around going, hey, we're Harvard. Hey, did I tell you? We're Harvard. They were just excited about learning, about the level of education that they were able to garner from being at that school. But again, I was afraid, and so I backed off and didn't think about it again for almost 10 years. And so it's in late 2009, early 2010, we were at Unity of Fort Worth, and there was a man who was going to that church who was going to TCU, the Bright Divinity School at TCU. And so I got talking to him, and he was telling me about the experience. And so that started piquing my interest. And when I looked at Nicodemus again, I was surprised to find out that there were 2 more encounters in the Bible with Nicodemus. And it shows kind of his opening to the beckoning of Spirit, opening to change, say, well, maybe there is something more here. And he started to open his heart and his mind and started to look. So in chapter 7, Jesus has been around preaching and doing all kinds of blasphemous stuff according to the Pharisees. And they sent guards out to bring, the Pharisees sent guards out, bring him here to us. And the guards came back empty-handed, and they said, where is he? Why didn't you bring him here? And he says, if you would have seen him talking and the people's reaction to him, I just like that. And the Pharisee said, a curse on him. He's being blasphemous, whatever. And Nicodemus steps forward in the daylight among his other Pharisee brothers, and he says, that's not how we work. We don't condemn somebody before we hear them. We don't condemn somebody until we hear what they have to say. This is not appropriate. And the other Pharisees looked at him and said, Nicodemus, are you from Galilee? Is this something new we need to know about you? And again, the story goes on, doesn't finish any more of that, so we don't know if they teased him or gave him a wedgie or whatever. But so he had that story, and so again, the beckoning of Spirit, he started opening up to, and started seeing, oh, maybe there's something here. Maybe there's something here that I can be a part of. And in 2010. Again, because of the man at Fort Worth Unity, I decided to apply to Bright Divinity School. And what I was looking for was a more progressive seminary. I didn't want to go to a very strict Baptist or whatever, not Baptist necessarily, but I wanted one that was more open, more progressive. And Bright Divinity School definitely was. So I applied and sent in my letter, and I told them, I don't believe the way you do. I have in the past, and it's just not my faith anymore, but I would like to be a part of the conversation. And they said, hey, come on over and come in, and we're going to give you a scholarship to come. And it's like, yeah. I remember Maggie and I were sitting at the table. We got the letter, and we opened it and read that not only yes, but please come here. Please come and be a part of this. And so I got to go to school. And what really helped me to understand that it was a progressive school was we had orientation the first week. And one of the first things they told us is, we will not refer to God in the masculine. We will not call God him in this school. That is not a part of what we are. And I thought, wow. And I took different classes. I took some transgender Christian classes. I took some other, all across the board, that said, God is. God is. And what an experience. What an experience that I got to do. Spent 8 years following that path. And then the last time we see Nicodemus, he's all in. He's all in. He's not just talking the talk, he's walking the walk. Jesus has been crucified and about to be laid in the tomb. And Joseph of Arimathea, who is called a disciple of Jesus, goes to the tomb with Nicodemus. Nicodemus goes to the tomb with him. And it says that he carries all the spices and all the things that need to be for burial. And he was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who earlier had visited Jesus at night. Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds. Now, when I looked at the background for that, 75 pounds meant you were wealthy. 75 pounds meant you were high-scale people. And he wanted to honor him that way. And so the beckoning of Spirit brought him to the place where he would open up and not only listen to Jesus, and not only defend, but also care for. And again, in public, in broad daylight, he's bringing this to take care of Jesus. And what an opening that must have been for him. How frightening at first, because there's the reference I read said there was about 6,000 Pharisees at this time, and never in the history again and never before were there Pharisees, only in this small time period. And he was one of them. He was a part of the group. And to give that up and to open himself to that extent, the beckoning of spirit must have been really reached him. Something inside that said, I want that. I want that. And so he opened himself up to that. And to the extent that he, again, 75 pounds of aloe and myrrh to prepare the body of Jesus for entombment. For me, it was, I started Bright in 2010, and shortly after that, there's this little group of people that stopped going to Fort Worth and broke off and formed some little group on the other side of town in a studio, and called Harmony. And I got, and again, it's like, okay, and it was okay, I'm in. And it turned out to be one of the biggest blessings of my life, to be a part of that and to become a part of a ministry of people. It was, I loved being in the studio. There was something raw about that. When you're up there talking about God and preaching, and there's a naked torso over here in the corner, that's been a plaster model or whatever. There's something about it, just brings it back down to life and says, God is today, just as He is. It's not off somewhere. Let's rise above being human. Let's rise above being whatever. And so the beckoning of spirit, and it continues today. There are certain things that have happened in my life, and I'm guessing in Nicodemus's life as well, that as I go on, every once in a while, something else, hey, Scott, and there's something else to do. I told you the story about walking down the hallway at my house, and all of a sudden I felt a paintbrush in my hand. Now, I was not a painter. I had never had an idea that I wanted to paint. And all of a sudden it's turned out to be a spiritual outlet, music came the same way, poetry, that kind of thing. Again, the beckoning of spirit. It's always, we're more than we know. We're more than we know. And sometimes our rules, we have set up inside of ourselves this rule that says, this is how life works. This is how life works. And if it's not this way, then it's not right. And it's not God. And we can get caught up in avoiding living because we're afraid of letting that beckoning take us outside the lines of that, coloring outside the lines. But when we let the Spirit, again, beckon us and call us and say, what if? What if you did this? What if you applied? What if you did these things to let your life become bigger? And I don't think there's any age where that stops. I don't think at any time in our lives God says, okay, you're done. I've ready. I think that beckoning happens all through our lives when we're open to it, and life becomes something more than we said. One of the verses says, we're more than we know or could ever conceive. More than we know or could ever conceive, and that's turned out to be my experience as well. It's just I didn't know that life could be like this, and fortunately, it wasn't up to me to decide all this or to find all this. The beckoning of spirit just kept saying, Scott, come look, give this a try. Thank you.